Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of South Carolina.
This is Rogers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rogers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks.
Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of South Carolina.
This is Rogers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rogers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick! Plays it in at the buzzer! That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for August the 27th. We are just 4 days away from the return of Carolina football. It's Gamecocks and Hokies Sunday afternoon after a great weekend of college football. Starting on Thursday, Friday, intriguing games, Saturday, marquee games. And then you get the Gamecocks and Hokies, and then the nightcap, you get Catholics versus convicts. And then on Monday night, we get Jordan and Bill Belichick against the Horned Frogs of TCU. All right, welcome in. I am Keith Alsep. This is episode number 1837 of Gamecock Pod Daily and Gamecock Pod Live. In just a couple of minutes, we will be joined by Hale McGranahan from thebigspur.com. Then later, it's 2 for Wednesday, not 2 for Tuesday. Alex Jones from thebigspur.com will join us as well. Of course, huge news for the Gamecocks. In our Nana's Porch news notes and highlights, brought to you by the award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte area, Nana's Porch, your go-to for all your catering needs, whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, a celebration of any kind, birthday, wedding, anniversary, engagement, whatever catering event you may have, Nana's Porch has got you covered. And jump in the Nana's Porch chat box and leave your comments as we bring in the hardest working man I know on the recruiting beat. And that is Hale McGranahan from thebigspur.com. Hale, 4 days away. How we feeling, my friend?
Doing pretty well. Glad that we're here. Glad there was some college football on TVs last Saturday, and really excited to see some more tomorrow night and on through the weekend. Every day this weekend. It's pretty awesome.
It is awesome. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Almost like Michael Corleone's first wife from The Godfather, except I think she got a couple of those days out of order. But at any rate, have you ever been to a game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium before?
No, this will be my first time in that building. Been to the other one, but this will be
me too.
number one. Yeah.
Yep, it'll be a first. No guarantee it'll ever happen again, so I got to be there. So can't wait for that. All right, Hale, a lot of big news. It was a big day on Friday for the Gamecocks. And so first, just what's your thoughts on Carolina and the Nike deal? I think football and women's basketball are really going to be the featured programs in this thing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it sure seems that way. And when I was reading through that that stuff that was released by the university on Friday, it was I don't know if surprise is the right way to put it, but seeing all the things that are attached to like Asia Wilson and the women's basketball program, that not a surprise, but interesting to see, and all the stuff they're going to be making available for the football program as well. It seems like there's going to be a lot of cool opportunities going on, and certainly some stuff that's probably going to get the attention of recruits. And at the end of the day, that's what matters the most. And there are people who will say that your uniform provider shouldn't be what pushes you over the top for recruits, but you know what? Having Nike is not going to hurt. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Whereas maybe Under Armour didn't necessarily help. Having Nike is not going to hurt. I don't know if there's a better way for me to put it, or if that makes sense to anybody outside of my my little brain that I got attached to my shoulders. But I think that's a good thing for sure for Carolina, for all sports, not just football and women's basketball, but men's basketball especially. I think that's probably going to help probably the most, because I don't think having Under Armour for the men's basketball team was a good thing.
Well, I can tell you this. I don't know about in football, but in basketball, since the 1980s, well, it was Nike and Adidas. Then Under Armour came along. But in men's basketball, your AAU program and the shoe company that they were sponsored by pretty much decided where you were going to college.
Right.
So they decided for you. So, but it doesn't hurt. And certainly it looks like Nike may be doing like a women's Jumpman with Asia Wilson having a special design, which is pretty cool to have the logo basically for women's basketball. I know it's not the same as like the Jumpman because of Michael Jordan or even Jerry West, the NBA logo, but kind of cool for them. Dawn Staley with a 30-year plus relationship with Nike. I think that's big, but I think it's big for football. And so here's the question I have. So they're going to fully redesign all three uniforms, the whites, the garnets, the blacks. Would you rather have $10 million cash for NIL or an alternate uniform?
I mean, in today's revenue sharing era, I think it's hard to say anything other than the cash, but
yes,
that won't
only correct answer.
It's my understanding that that's not a decision that'll be up to South Carolina. That'll be something Nike makes the call on whenever that happens.
I get it. So we had that, and then Friday night, I really want to get your thoughts on Darius Gray, literally and metaphorically a huge commitment for South Carolina, adding another out-of-state 5-star. I think all of the ones from, except Josiah Thompson, have come from Virginia or the DMV. Nick Harbor, Dylan Stewart. Now you get Darius Gray from Richmond, Virginia, a 5-star. And Hale, I think this guy is so versatile. He could play defensive tackle, center, and either guard spot, and maybe even be a right tackle. But Darius Gray, very impressive on film. Your thoughts, Hale?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play any on defense. But on offense, they see him fitting in at any one of those three positions, tackle, guard, or center. So I think it's probably just going to be a matter of which spot's going to allow him to get on the field the fastest and keep him at Carolina the longest. If you can find a way to get him some early playing time, wherever that may be, that's probably going to be a good thing because he's super talented. Obviously a mature guy for anyone who watched the announcement and the interview he did with 24/7's Tom Lloyd. He's got a really good head attached to his shoulders. And is someone who not only has got position flexibility, but he's just a really good player. Wherever he's going to line up, it's probably going to be a good thing for Carolina.
I agree. I mean, just – South Carolina, the stronger, longer worked. I think they started recruiting him in 2021. He's been to South Carolina more than other places, but for a while it looked like it might be LSU or Tennessee, Ohio State. Clemson was in there. I mean, we all know when they take them to those churches up there, sometimes the offering goes the other way instead of going into the offering plate. But I mean, how big of a deal is it to beat the defending national champion, SEC rivals, your in-state rival, and virtually every school in the country for a guy like Darius Gray?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that needs to be said beyond that, Keith. That sums it up pretty well. I don't know that there was ever a real threat outside of LSU. I mean, South Carolina, like you said, was in it with him longer and was on him stronger than just about anybody. And, there was a point when it looked like LSU was in that pole position for him, but distance from home was a factor, even though Columbia is not super close to Richmond. Obviously, it's a whole lot closer than that. He felt better about relationships and all those old-fashioned types of recruiting things with South Carolina than he did at Tennessee or Clemson or even Ohio State for that matter. So that stuff still counts for something. And it's got to be a nice feather in the cap for Beamer and the staff to be able to get this one done.
No doubt about it. So I guess Monday afternoon, the Free Sewell hashtag finally came into effect. Now Rahsul Faison, free at last. Granted the extra year of eligibility, we found out a lot of stuff we didn't know behind the scenes, that the waiver was initially denied and they kept working on it. But now it's all settled from your contacts and everything. What does adding Rahsul Faison add to South Carolina's offense, in your opinion?
Yeah, it seems like every time I talk to somebody or interact with someone and they're sort of sharing their first impression of Faison, it was a lot of the same stuff. And a lot of it was unprompted, not even me asking, like, hey, what do you think about this Faison guy? It's like, oh, by the way, that new running back, he is put together. He's an impressive looking guy. So that to me is kind of the overriding thing that's kind of stuck with me over the last 8.5, 9 months, since he's been here, is that he just looks like a grown man. And I guess he is a grown man at 25 years old, so that's probably to be expected. But that's been the biggest thing that's stuck with me over the course of this period of time. And so excited to see what he's got to offer on Sunday when he gets on the field for Carolina. I think maybe some folks are a little ambitious, a little excited, too optimistic about what his season might look like from a production standpoint. But I think he's going to help make a difference for this team. And one thing that Tony Morrell reported about a week or two ago was the pass protection aspect to this offense. I think he's really good that way. And you got a franchise quarterback. Keep him as healthy as possible.
That's right, no doubt about it. And so it does look like for the third year in a row, South Carolina will be starting a true freshman on the offensive line. And Shedrick Surratt maybe was forgotten about guy or not talked about guy in this recruiting class. And quietly through the spring, no spring game on TV. Everything's under wraps now. No depth chart for week one from Shane Beamer and company. Steve Fink putting out the depth chart, which is basically the roster position by position, listing everybody. But Shedrick Surratt being named to the preseason Sean Alexander National Freshman of the Year watch list, 6'4", 336. I just don't think we realized just how strong and how athletic this guy was coming out of Gaffney. What are your thoughts on Shedrick Surratt?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he was a four-star and well thought of, and I think we were thinking he could be a guy who eventually plays his way into the line. I don't know that anybody can comfortably say a freshman offensive lineman is going to come in and start on day one. Darius Gray or Shed Surratt, there's always a transition from the high school level to the college level for an offensive lineman, and I mean his name has come up a ton this offseason, and as early as before the end of spring practice, it was starting to sound like he had a legitimate chance to start at guard for Carolina, a left guard spot. So it seems that he hasn't done anything to let go of that opportunity, and I think maybe part of why, at least I thought that he or didn't think that he was going to necessarily be a starter day one. And this is going back to when he was first getting on campus, was when they brought in another batch of transfer interior offensive linemen guys who were third, fourth, and fifth year guys, or in the case of others, 6-year guys. So, he was going against some other grown men, and I think he's shown to this point that he's a better option. So, assuming that he's that first left guard out on Sunday, it's going to be fun to see how it plays out for him. And one thing that I try to stress and think about before each season is that chances are the first five of the offensive line in game one is going to change at some point during the season. Now, it didn't last season, but you never know how it's going to take shape with performance, and of course injuries are going to be a factor and all that. So at least as we sit here on Wednesday, 4 days before kickoff, it sure looks like Shed Surratt, the time is now.
No doubt. All right, so if it's all right, I do want to ask you about some other high school players. One who has a decision on the books for September 8th. That is cross flex tight end Caden Ramsey, 6'5", 205, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, South Carolina in the mix for him. 45 catches and I think 13 interceptions in 14 games.
Yeah.
In single A football, a big time athlete. I think Chris Ard would describe him as a super sleeper jumbo athlete who's flown under the proverbial recruiting radar. Maybe I got that right, but it's been a long time since I've read anything from him. But by all accounts, a big time athlete. Other Power 4 offers. We're a little over a week away from that decision. Your thoughts on Caden Ramsey as a player, what he could add, and I'm feeling pretty good about this one. I still have one or two connections in Cross, so.
Yeah, I would think that Carolina gets it done. I'm sure I said it before with you that I thought they were going to get it done with Tilden Riley. Personally, I kind of wondered why they elected to go on Tilden Riley. Went on Caden Ramsey, but that's a moot point right now. Ramsey, he's intriguing because of the name. He's legit 6'4", 6'5". He's about 205 pounds. And I think he's going to add some weight in a hurry whenever he gets to college, wherever he ends up. Again, I think it'll be Carolina. But I don't think there's going to be any issue for him putting some weight on. He plays basketball, and he's a track athlete too. So he's not spending a lot of time doing football stuff once football season is over. He, Cross played in the state championship game last year, and I would imagine that by that following Monday, he was practicing with the basketball team and doing whatever basketball-related thing, and then again segues right into track, where he was a high jumper as his primary event. And his basketball highlights. He's a pretty good basketball player now. I don't think he's getting necessarily attention from smaller colleges. Maybe he is. But he's a good player, very coordinated. He's not like a super explosive athlete, but he's plenty athletic, and he's got those long arms. And again, that's a plan that makes me think that there's something there to work with if you're Don Elliott and Mike Shula and this Carolina program, assuming that's the decision on September 8th.
So earlier this week, one of your former colleagues, Steve Wiltfong, a.k.a. the Oracle, formerly of 24/7 Sports, kind of like the artist formerly known as Prince until he was Prince again, but that doesn't matter. So after the Gamecocks landed Gray, he put out an article saying South Carolina's, I think, number 16 recruiting class could get even better because they are relentlessly staying on several guys that have committed to other schools. And I'm not going to ask you about all of them because I don't think some of those guys are moving off their decisions, particularly from what I hear about Julian Walker. It sounds like he's really locked in with Michigan. But I did want to ask about some in the border states, I guess. And that is Rock Hill safety Tamarian Watkins. It looked like it was going to be South Carolina, and it was kind of a surprise. It was Texas A&M, even though we heard, the big NIL offer, but that's a long way away from home to go to Texas 8-5. That's what I call them anyway, because until somebody goes more than 8-5, they just always seem to be Texas 8-5. What are your thoughts on the Gamecocks' chances to flip Tamarian Watkins?
Yeah, I'm not going to put a number on it. He's been a guy that Carolina had a really good opportunity to go get. The ball in for him to the Gamecocks in January, I think it was. Then in July, he commits to A&M. Like we said on the Big Spur, they were going to keep recruiting. No surprise there. We'll see how that shakes out. Long way from to College Station. That's a long way from College Station. And I guess there is a direct flight from Charlotte to Houston, I think. So yeah, that's a lot of logistics out there and go play a new position.
Probably the most financially effective way would be Charlotte to Houston and then rent a car and drive.
Yeah, I mean, you could always swap. We've talked about before, I think. But I do know there's a direct from Charlotte to Austin. Maybe the drive's a little bit longer from Austin to College Station than it is from Houston College Station, but not by much. I don't have to tell you that. You're on this podcast.
All right. So 2 players from North Carolina. One that going into announcement day, it looked like South Carolina, at least some people, I don't think you ever thought it was actually going to happen, but it appears like South Carolina will continue to recruit P.J. Dean, the defensive lineman from Winston-Salem, whose brother played at Georgia. It looked like Georgia. Then there were some flips of predictions to South Carolina. Then he chose Georgia. And then close friend of Jazavian Currents, Samari Smoke Matthews, a corner from Charlotte, Huff High School, Texas. So you got Texas and Texas 8 and 5 getting guys from the Carolinas. Your thoughts on Dean and Matthews?
Well, I'll say this about Matthews. I think they have a better shot at Julian Walker in the boat than Matthews. I know there have been some folks out there who said Julian Walker is more than likely going to sign with Michigan. And that very well could be true. He's good. Obviously, he thinks highly of him. But I think with Matthews, that ship is probably sailed. Never say never in recruiting, but I'm not counting on that happening. Everybody needs to really get their hopes up at this point. Again, maybe that changes down the road. As we sit here today on August 27th, I don't see that happening. And Walker, I know you didn't ask him to mention him earlier, but I don't think that door's been closed. Still keeping an eye on him there. P.J. Dean, as you kind of mentioned, I was always a little skeptical of that situation, largely because the people who I was talking to at Carolina, obviously, were optimistic, but didn't really know. They thought they had a good shot, but we're getting this guy. Whereas, especially the day of his decision and leading up to his decision, some other folks from other companies who I have great respect for and have good relationships with were reporting that, hey, you know what, P.J. Dean's leaning towards South Carolina. South Carolina's in a good spot. That just didn't jibe with what I was hearing. And the people who I talk to are typically pretty well informed. They are, and it just clashed with what I was hearing. So I was all skeptical of Carolina standing with him, and was of the belief that it was maybe kind of drummed up to build some suspense. And then with some of the stuff that was reported after Dean's commitment to Georgia, how hey, Georgia came in and did this at the last second. And these coaches talked to him while they were at the beach. And those conversations were what turned the tide, no pun intended. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. And I've been around doing this stuff long enough to where my instincts were pretty right on that one. And I'm going to stick to that story until I'm wrong. And maybe he'll show up in Columbia for a game at some point this fall. We'll see. But at the end of the day, that's going to be Georgia. I don't think that one's going to change. And I'll add this. He was an offensive line recruit for everybody, and Georgia's kind of the one who got him thinking, hey, let me play on the defensive line. I want to change my trajectory and do that. Well, for what he is, his body type and size, like he fits their system, their odd front system, as like a 3-4 defensive end, much better than he would fit South Carolina system as maybe kind of an undersized 3 technique, but is he twitchy and athletic enough to be a true 4-3 defensive end or 4-2-5 defensive end? Excuse me. I don't know that that's necessarily as good a fit in the type of scheme that Carolina runs versus what Georgia runs. So for his sake, and I'm not saying that like South Carolina shouldn't go after him because he's obviously a talented player, but for his sake, he's probably a better fit at Georgia. And I know Carolina fans listening probably won't like me saying that, but that's just the reality of it. He's kind of a tweener for Carolina and what they do.
All right, so Hale, we're going to wrap it up. And so I'm going to rapid fire, give you 4 games. Just give me the winner, no point spread. Friday night, Georgia Tech at Colorado. Who you got?
Colorado.
Saturday, Texas at Ohio State, number 1 versus number 2.
Texas.
LSU at Clemson, Saturday night prime time.
I'm gonna say Clemson because I'm still wondering how healthy Garrett Nussmeier is.
All right, and lastly, Sunday night, Catholics at Convicts.
I'm gonna go Convicts.
I am too. Good stuff. Hale, thank you for being with us. Great stuff. As always, be well. My friend, maybe I'll run into you Sunday outside the Georgia Dome or something.
Sounds
or
good.
Not the Georgia Dome, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Safe travels and be well. And thanks again. We'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Appreciate you having me, Keith. Have a good flight and enjoy the game.
Thanks, brother. All right, that was Hale McGranahan. Today's show is powered by Prize Picks. Preseason football is underway and college football has started. We had week 0 with, they called it Farmageddon, but it was really Fumbleageddon to me. But you can already start making picks for the 2025 season on Prize Picks. Get your picks in before week 1 kicks off. Some of my favorite NFL players I'm going to be picking this year. Saquon Barkley. I love him. He's healthy. He's with the right team, with the right system. I love him. I love Joey Football, Joe Burrow at Cincinnati. Josh Allen, I think, will lead the Bills to the Super Bowl this year. And then a guy I don't like is Aaron Rodgers. So I'll probably be picking a lot of less. With Prize Picks, it's simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you win. And you could cash in up to 2,000 times your winnings. Prize Picks also puts their members first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. With Prize Picks, you can choose Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, Visa, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can still double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And so my Prize Picks of the week for week 1, I'm with Hale. I'm going Convicts over Catholics, and I'm picking Carson Beck to have more than 1.5 touchdown passes. I'm taking Jeremiah Smith, the Ohio State wide receiver. Ohio State may have the best 2 players in the country with him and the safety that transferred from Alabama, who is an absolute beast. I think it's safe to assume Jeremiah Smith will have more than 81.5 receiving yards against the Horns down. And for some reason, I'm thinking Garrett Nussmeier is going to have less than 287.5 passing yards because of that Clemson defensive front. So I picked more. Carson Beck, more than 1.5 touchdown passes. Jeremiah Smith, more than 81.5 receiving yards. And then Garrett Nussmeier, less than 287.5 passing yards. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code Gamecocks to get $50 in lineups after you make your first $5 play. You don't even have to win. You can go to your Apple store or your Google store, download the Prize Picks app, enter the code Gamecocks to get $50 in lineups after you make your first $5 play. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's welcome back in to the show the pride of Hampton County, and that is Alex Jones of thebigspur.com. Alex, for Sydney Rice. Yep, old Sydney. We just throw it up. Old Sydney, go get it. We're 4 days away from Gamecocks and Hokies. How are we feeling out there?
Doing good. Glad it's finally game weekend. Talking season feels like, you're always ready for talking season to get here, but then, a few weeks into it, you're ready for talking season to be over. And glad it's game weekend, starting to be able to talk about a game here.
No doubt about it, Alex. So a lot of things have been happening for Carolina. Friday, as you can see, I've already transitioned to the swoosh for today's program. South Carolina signing a $77.5 million 10-year deal beginning, effective August 1st of next year with Nike. They're going to completely redo all 3 sets of uniforms, and in the first half of the deal, by 2030, if they don't produce an alternate uniform, they got to give the Gamecocks $10 million. I asked Hale this. I'd rather have $10 million in cash for NIL than the last alternate uniform that was produced, but maybe Nike will come up with something cool. But would you rather have an alternate uniform or $10 million for NIL if you were Jeremiah Donati?
Yeah, these days that $10 million would do a lot for you in really any sport. Now I'm really interested to see, just from a uniform perspective, what Nike can do for South Carolina, just because you see what all these other Nike teams are getting with Nike. But I mean, it'd be hard to turn down $10 million if that was the case. But I think just with those kind of things, and then the rest of the deal, I think South Carolina got a pretty good deal in this with Nike. And just looking around, I think it's something that you hear South Carolina fans talk about a lot. The move to Nike. And I think it just ended up being a really good deal. It seems like a pretty good job by Jeremiah Donati and the rest of his staff on getting that one done.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, his mentor, Chris Del Conte at Texas, huge Nike school. Lee Steinberg represents a lot of Nike athletes. I think Donati has a pre-existing relationship with the new CEO of Nike. But he is a shrewd businessman, and we talked about this with Hale. Football and women's basketball, to me, are really the 2 feature programs in this deal, with the football team getting the choice of the top-of-the-line cleats that are worn by 75% of players in the National Football League. Everybody blamed every injury on Under Armour cleats, but when Alabama or Texas or, a lot of schools had guys go down with injuries, you never heard anybody blame the Nike shoes for that. They're going to redo all 3 uniforms. The women's basketball uniforms are going to be in the same template as the Olympic women's basketball team. And Asia Wilson will be featured prominently. It sounds like Nike is going to do something like the women's version of the Jumpman with Asia Wilson for Nike uniforms, and that South Carolina will get those. Dawn Staley, an icon. I think that, she has a 30-plus year relationship with Nike. She even had a featured Nike shoe when she was at the pinnacle of her professional career. And I think she's fired up about it because, quite frankly, and then we'll get back to football, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but Dawn Staley's lost some recruits lately to Southern Cal in particular because of the Nike brand. And I think that is about to come to an end. I'll just put it like that. I just think that gives Dawn Staley, I'm not saying she's ever taken a knife to a gunfight, but, somebody comes in with 2 pistols and you got an Uzi in your hand. It's kind of like fishing with dynamite. It's not even fair.
Yeah.
So always great to get a hangover reference. So it's football season. Let's talk about football. It's Gamecocks and Hokies. I do want to get very quickly just your thoughts on the Gamecocks landing Darius Gray, and then finally Rahsul Faison has been freed. The Free Sewell hashtag and everything that went on behind the scenes, and Darren Heitner, he's eligible. Give us your thoughts on Darius Gray, that pickup on Friday night, and then Monday afternoon. Rahsul Faison, everything's going good. There are these old Gamecocks that are like waiting on something bad to happen because everything's been coming up roses for the Gamecocks, but it was like that when Spurrier had it rolling. Why can't it be that way again?
Yeah, starting with Darius Gray, you can't, downplay how huge of a commitment that was for South Carolina. And, I think they've been in a really good spot with him for a long, long time, but just for the relationships he's built with Shane Beamer and Lonnie Teasley and Shan Survey and all those guys over there in that building. And, LSU tried to make a run and, maybe had the momentum there in the early spring, but South Carolina quickly got it back, really kind of around that official visit and moving forward. And we're in a really good spot. And a guy that, has all the talent in the world, I'm really interested to see just where he fits in on the offensive line. And I think it's one where they'll get him in and kind of see what spot is going to be best for him. You kind of see maybe even some tackle being in him and maybe playing some tackle. So really interested to see that. And just a huge pickup. It's, that was a big boy recruiting battle, a 5-star in the Virginia area. State South Carolina really tries to get in. It's been really good there. And they're just in that Richmond area, and South Carolina's able to go in. And, I think it just shows, the progress the program's made, but then, the recruiting chops that Shane Beamer and the rest of that staff have. That, Darius Gray probably could have gone anywhere in the country that he wanted to. So just a big win for South Carolina. Then with another big win was Rahsul Faison being ruled eligible. I think on here we've been saying for a little while, it could feel like next week it could happen, feel like next week it could happen, and you get to the game week and you're starting to wonder if it is going to happen. But just huge news for South Carolina, just because now you look at that running back room with Faison, Augustov, Matt Fuller, Jawan Howe, Oscar Attaway. You look at it, it's a pretty deep running back room and its potential. And you heard some really good things about Augustov and some of the things that he did in the scrimmages. And you heard, kind of Matt Fuller and Oscar Attaway were taking that next step. And then, Oscar Attaway is just a really consistent guy. A guy I think that's taken on a leadership role in that room. But also you saw what he could do in the Illinois game with that touchdown and kind of his performance. And even in a game where he admitted he was nowhere near 100% going into that game. So I think, and then you see what Faison did at Utah State. You look at his highlights, and the guy we got some explosiveness to him, and some, just going to be a really good running back. So I think you have to like the depth in that running back room. It's one that if there's an injury or two, you feel like they can be able to sustain it. And so just a huge win for South Carolina to get him in. I'm really excited to see what he can do. And I think it's good for him to be able to have that practice where it's not like he's coming in on Monday or Tuesday and getting right to practice. He's just really that was picking up right where he left off, just being able to practice.
So I got to say, I am really fired up about that, but I've got to say, Alex, and I keep hearing like 2 weeks in a row after that second scrimmage, and then on Monday afternoon I got another text, thrilled about Faison and Isaiah Gustav are probably the top two backs on the team. Then Darren Usher goes on, I think, with Jamie Bradford and Mike Morgan, and says the same thing. And hardly anybody's talked about him. We talked about Matthew Fuller. Everybody knows freak athlete that Jawarn Howell is. I just think it gives South Carolina more options. You've got 5 scholarship guys. They're all about 210 to 220 pounds. And athletic, powerful. Matthew Fuller, certainly Jawarn Howell, but then Isaiah Gustav, and then Carolina may have the 2 oldest running backs in college football. I think Oscar Attaway, and if Oscar's dad is on, I'm saying this in jest, but I think he's number 27 because he's 27 years old. Maybe we can just put 25 on Faison, and that's not just their number, that's their age as well. But certainly mature guys in that room, very talented guys in that room, and I think that running back room is going to be an area of strength and certainly much improved depth compared to a year ago.
Yeah, I'm sitting here trying to think about, when the last time this running back room was this deep. I think it's been a little bit. They've had maybe 2 or 3 guys they felt really good about, but I think right now you feel good about all those guys. And obviously, Matt Fuller and Jawarn Howell are still a little bit inexperienced, but you hear kind of them taking that next step and things like that. So I think just with Faison, I think you have to imagine he's going to be that number 1 back when they get out to the game on Sunday. I think you're going to see some rotation there, especially early on. I think you're going to see Attaway get his reps in there. You're going to see Gustav get his reps in there. Now I think it's just with those guys kind of figuring out, who's the best pass blocker. That's a huge part in this. And so I'm really interested to see just how the rotation looks on Sunday. But I think you're definitely going to be seeing Faison, Attaway, Gustav, and those guys.
Yeah, I think we got to go back to the Muschamp era when they had like 5 backs, and usually 2 or 3 of them were always hurt. Right? You had Rico Dowdle, you had A.J. Turner, you had Tyshawn Williams, and then you had another guy I can't think of who had a huge game at Ole Miss, broke off a long run, but it just seemed like those guys some of them were always banged up. So there are strength in numbers in the Southeastern Conference at the running back room, and it's great to have that kind of depth because of the schedule South Carolina's going to play, especially when we roll into Cocktober. It's really that's going to determine whether or not South Carolina makes the college football playoff, in my opinion. Is certainly you got to start the season. That game at Missouri is huge, but then you get Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and then you end the season with Clemson, who's going to be the ACC champion, because that's like, I don't know, it's kind of like one college team in AA, the Skyline 2A region in South Carolina. Clemson and Woodruff, Liberty, Chapman, Chesney, and well, it used to be Blue Ridge, but now they blew up. But anyway, there's nobody else in that league. Let's face it. Clemson could go 10-2. They could lose to LSU and South Carolina. They're still going to be in the college football playoff. But really big, I think. And so, Alex, I got to ask the question. Is Kason Henry really going to start over Tree Babalade? I mean, I just, that's blowing my mind that that's even a possibility, unless Tree is got some kind of nagging injury. There's no depth chart this week. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it could happen. I think with Kason Henry, the thing to kind of think about is it kind of feels like almost a year or two for Kason Henry, just because he battled those injuries early on in his career and had all those 13 starts last year. And I think you've heard, he's kind of taken some steps in his game. And so now kind of, I think you could see maybe him taking a step just because he had each of those starts last year. And then with Tree, I think it's been, I think that competition's, been pretty, competitive and for that right tackle spot. Like, he's been right in the mix for it. And, you have to imagine that competition is going to help both of them, and whoever plays out there, that's going to help. But with Kason, I'm really interested to see what he looks like, just because, again, I've said it a few times, but just kind of having that full year of starting, that experience in it, that's going to be huge for him and something to build off of this year.
All right, so it looks like for the third year in a row, South Carolina starting a true freshman, Shedrick Surratt at left guard. He was just named to the Sean Alexander National Freshman of the Year preseason watch list. That's kind of a shocker. But I feel like at running back, at wide receiver with the returners and the extremely talented newcomers, the tight end room, and on the offensive line, this offense, and even at quarterback with Luke Doty, Air Nolan, Cutter Woods, I just think South Carolina has more talent, more experience, more players at virtually every single position, and that gives me great confidence in the offense. Lenora Sellers, the familiarity with Mike Shula, the work that Mike Furry has done, the fact that by all accounts it's a very collaborative effort with this coaching staff, which you have, Mike Shula was a head coach at Alabama, longtime coordinator in the NFL. Sean Elliott, head coach. Mike Furry, head coach. Marquell Blackwell, an offensive coordinator and play caller. At every single position, you have veteran coaches on this offense, and then that whole group of guys. I know Sean Elliott's not the offensive line coach, but in his heart of hearts, he is an offensive line coach. Greg Atkins, Lonnie Teasley, Sam Survey. I don't know that there's really going to be a weakness in offense. And I think, if it is Kason Henry, he'll probably be on a short leash if he's getting beat off the edge or getting called for holding penalties, because Tree Babalade is right there with him. So I think that's a motivational factor there. Iron sharpens iron. It's not him and a true freshman that was a 3-star competing for that job. Your thoughts just on the overall depth of the offense?
Yeah, I think that's just about with every position on that offensive line. it's deep at just about every position. I mean, you think about it from Shed Surratt's perspective, like if he does indeed start at left guard, like he's had to come in and beat a lot of experienced players to get that spot. But you think about it, you mentioned kind of the competition that Tree and Casey are going to have, but I think that's something that is going to continue to help those guys, just because that right guard's going to have competition, center's going to have competition. Like they got guys in those in that 2 deep. But you think about Nolan Hay was an all-conference player last year, and Incarnate Word, he's going to provide competition for that center and guard spots. Marquis Henderson, entering year 3, he's going to provide competition. Like Rodney Newsom's another guy; he's an experienced player. Like I think they just, and Jatavius Shivers, he's another one that at that tackle spot. He came in that Alabama game last year and played really well. So I think that's something that is something where in the 2 deep they're going to have guys where if they feel like they need to make a change, I think they feel good about it. But I think that's just they talk about competition, really not just offensive linemen building the team, and I think the depth that they've built in that room via the transfer portal and high school ranks, and that 2 deep's got pretty solid, and I think that's something that can continue to push each other and help make the whole offensive lines of the unit better.
All right, so on defense, look, offense, you got Lenore Sellers. Okay. I also think you got Nick Harbor. My intel from somebody very close to him, from what I'm hearing, is Nick Harbor, confidence-wise, football-wise, his body, ability to run every route on the route tree to get in and out of his breaks, catching the football. He, by all accounts, seems like he's poised. I'm not saying, look, until he actually does it, I would not compare anybody to Megatron, but the size, the physicality, the speed, now that he's taken a year off from track, my sources say, his first 2 years, he really didn't know the difference between cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, where the open spots in the zone was. Now he knows exactly where to be, how to read an option route, how to run every single route, where to sit down to recognize coverages. And he and Lenore Sellers are on the same page. I mean, is Nick Harbor going to break out this year and be that 5-star player instead of the 5-star athlete that he's been his first 2 years at South Carolina?
It kind of feels like he's ready to take that next step. I remember a few of those open practices when we got to go out there and see a few of the periods. Like, we got to see some, routes on the air type of thing. But, it just looked more comfortable and a little bit more fluid for me, him getting in and out of those routes. And I think with him, it just, you saw the light kind of coming on in the middle of the season and having this spring. You mentioned kind of the mental part of the game. I think a lot of people think about, he can improve from an on-field perspective as well with this time. But I think also you had to continue to learn from the middle part of it, just because, he was having to balance track, learning to be a better on-field receiver, but then also learning how to read a defense. And now that he's had all this time, in off-season, preseason camp, all that, to kind of just get, I'm sure getting the film room with Mike Furry and the rest of the receivers. And I think it's going to be huge for him. And I think, they kind of count on him to step up, but, I think they feel pretty good about, where Mazio Bennett is, with Jared Brown, there's Dre Jacobs. And those freshmen, you have to imagine are going to be pushing as well. Donovan Murph, Brian Rowe, those guys. So, we talk about competition in that offensive room, but they got competition in that wide receiver room. And I think both of those units, the freshmen and that wide receiver and those older guys are really pushing each other. I think it's good to see that those guys are all competing. It's a healthy competition in there. But with Nick Harbor, I'm really interested to see, just because I think he did look a little bit more fluid, not fighting it as much as he was. I think he's putting a lot of work. I think we're hoping to see that work pay off this season.
All right, so I know there's been a lot of talk, not just about Nick Harbor, but Jared Brown, Mazio Bennett, Vandrevius Jacobs, all expected to take big steps this year. Probably nobody outworks Mazio Bennett. Jared Brown figured out, hey, I got to get bigger, stronger. I got to take better care of my body because I'm not at Coastal anymore. I'm in the SEC. And Dre Jacobs, all the talent in the world when he's healthy. No disputing that. And so if you have all four of those guys, how in the world can you play five? If those guys, assuming they stay healthy, I just can't see five freshman wide receivers playing. I think probably no more than three unless it's on special teams. And I still think it's Brian Rowe, Donovan Murphy, and Malik Clark, and probably in that order right now. And then Jaden Sellers. Jordan Gidron, he's a big-time athlete. He's fast. He came in early. But he really hadn't played even a whole lot of high school football. I'm not doubting his physical ability, but that's kind of a shocker to me that, and honestly, I don't understand why Lex Cyrus wouldn't be a kickoff return guy with 10.4 documented speed in 100 meters, especially if you're going to put Nick Harbor back there. Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, with Lex specifically, I think he can be a guy, in the future could be a kick return guy. Maybe you see a little bit of a issue, but you mentioned they kind of have some options back there with a Jared Brown or Nick Harbor, who seems pretty poised to be back there again. This is from a freshman wide receiver standpoint. I kind of agree with you that I'm thinking the number is probably going to be around 3 that the freshmen are going to play, and that is the 3 that I would lean to right now with Brian Rowe, Donovan Murphy, and Malik Clark. And it's pretty, impressive to hear what you hear about Donovan Murphy just because he wasn't here in the spring. But, Mike Furry mentioned, there wasn't much, he was able to really kind of pick up right where those guys left off because he was around so much. And I think he and Brian Rowe I think you're probably going to see those guys on Sunday play a little bit. And I think from a starting perspective, and not that it matters too much just because they rotate so much, but I think you'll probably see those veteran guys get better out there. But wouldn't be surprised to see a Donovan Murphy or Brian Rowe get in there and make a play. And I think for those freshman receivers now, it's just you've done what you're able to do in practice. Now it's you got to go out there and do it in an NFL stadium when the lights are on, when the whole nation is going to be watching. That's going to be kind of the next step for those guys.
So I think, everybody's fired up. Everybody's ready for this game. But how much does this game mean for Shane Beamer? Right? Like his dad is a legendary coach at Virginia Tech, and basically Virginia Tech ran him out of that program. Shane Beamer was the assistant head coach. He coached the bowl game there after Frank Beamer's final season. Torian Gray was his teammate at Virginia Tech. So you got that. He's going up against his alma mater. And we all know Shane Beamer, he keeps receipts and he finds ways to get really motivated for games. I think playing a quality opponent and playing Shane Beamer's alma mater, Frank Beamer, where I'm sure he's still the winningest all-time coach because they pretty much cycled through about everybody. And Brent Pry's first 3 seasons, I think he was 4-3-3-9, 7-6, and 6-7. So he's gone 6-6 in the weakest power league in the country. They lost 5 guys who got drafted and 12 other seniors who were signed or invited to camps, but they also brought in 30 transfers, and 11 of them after spring practice. They've got 2 new coordinators in Philip Montgomery, who was a longtime Art Briles disciple. And then you bring in Sam Seifkis, who has coached in the National Football League as a linebackers coach the last 4 years. 2 years with the Vikings in 21 and 22, the last 2 years with the Arizona Cardinals. And he was the defensive coordinator at Wofford before that. But Montgomery worked with Art Briles for a long time, then got the head job at Tulsa, then was offensive coordinator at Auburn. Now he is at Virginia Tech. And they got Matt Moore, who was with Neil Brown, both at Troy and at West Virginia, and he was at Texas Tech as well. He's an air raid guy. With all these transfers and 11 guys in the spring and 2 new coordinators, what do we really know about Virginia Tech other than the fact that they've got a pretty dynamic dual threat quarterback, and they've got, 4 returning starters in special teams, and South Carolina has 0 guys that had ever kicked or held in a game. And you guys didn't even get to ask Joe D about that last week. And I don't know if you're going to get to ask him this week.
Yeah, first off, back to the Shane Beamer, Frank Beamer thing, I think we need to set over-under on how many times Frank Beamer's going to be shown on TV on Sunday, because I think it's going to be a lot. And then to the Virginia Tech part, I'm interested to hear, kind of what the talk is about from the coordinators, really Shane Beamer about game planning for Virginia Tech, just because there's so much unknown with that team, so many new pieces. I mean, on both sides of the ball, there's a lot of turnover in Virginia Tech, and then they have, 30 new transfers that came into the program, but then you add in, Phil Montgomery and Sam Seascus, who are new coordinators. And with Montgomery, you can probably go back and look at some of the stuff he did at Auburn and Baylor, and even what he did with the Stallions in the USFL. You could probably look a little bit at that. The Seascus, I think it's, I'm interested to hear what they were able to find just on him, just because there's so much unknown to them. But I think it's one where it's probably on both sides of the ball. You get into the game and going to have to adjust to a few things on those first 2 drives, and that's probably both sides of the ball. South Carolina may do a few things differently as well. But I think that's a big key to the game is kind of who can make those adjustments. And there's a few keys from like an on-field perspective, but I think that's a big one that's kind of maybe under the radar is who can make those adjustments early on to kind of figure out some schemes and systems and things like that.
So this game is going to feature 2 dynamic dual threat quarterbacks in Lenore Sellers, and then you've got Kyron Drones at Virginia Tech. He is a redshirt senior, 6'2", 235. Almost, not quite as big as Lenore Sellers, but in the same ballpark. And that Art Briles system, they make you defend the entire width and length of the field on just about every play. And that's going to be important for South Carolina's defense because, they're going to be inexperienced at defensive tackle, inexperienced at linebacker, a veteran secondary group. You got Dylan Stewart, you got JT Gear, you got Brian Thomas Jr., and even Desmond Umeozulu, who's played a lot of football at that edge spot. I'm feeling pretty comfortable that on defense it's probably going to be Nick Barrett and Monkel Goodwine coming out there first, and then Gabriel Brownlow Dindy, and then we'll see. Is it Troy Pikes? Is it Xavier Hardy? Christian Ingram, it may take him a few weeks. And at linebacker, the great thing is these guys are long, explosive, twitchy, fast athletes. J.R. Johnson, Sean Murphy, Justin Okoronkwo. How are you feeling about the Gamecock defense in this matchup with the Hokies?
Yeah, I think a big key in this game is going to be open field tackling, just because of what you mentioned from kind of that spread and that kind of with Kyron Jones, like thing that we're going to talk about with the Noah Sellers. Like it could be hard to get that guy down. I think open field tackling is going to be key. And I think limiting explosive plays, especially for the first game. You hope you don't have those breakdowns, but if you're going to have those breakdowns, you got to limit them. And I think that's something that both of these quarterbacks can do when they get outside the pocket on these unscheduled plays. They can make these big explosive plays with their feet or with their arms. So I think keeping these quarterbacks contained, but then also open field tackling, getting them on the ground, and getting them explosive plays is a huge factor in this game. And I think you have to imagine this is really kind of a defensive game playing every game, but I think you have to stop the run early on and try to make Virginia Tech a one-dimensional offense. And if you get them into behind the chains on the 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 10 somewhere in there, I think you can really kind of pin your ears back there. And, at the same time, though, you do have to be careful doing that with drones. You got to stay in those rushing lanes because if you blitz and you don't get there, he can make you pay for that and get a first down. Just kind of the same with North Sally too. So it's a really good quarterback battle for a week one, just because there are some similarities between the two. And I think it's just a big key in the game is who can make the least mistakes kind of in these first games early on, just because these guys can't make those big explosive plays.
So the Gamecocks lead the all-time series 11-7-2, but since the ACC championship season of 1969, South Carolina is 7-2-2 against the Hokies, but they haven't played since 1991. Obviously, the Gamecocks went in the SEC in 1992, but it was really kind of a really cool rivalry series from the mid-'80s to early '90s. They played every year from '86 to '91. The Gamecocks tied in '86 in Blacksburg. Scott Hagler shanked a field goal that would have won that game. The Gamecocks dominated the Hokies in '87. That was Todd Ellis, Sterling Sharp, Ryan Bethea, Harold Green, arguably one of the most talented teams in Gamecock history. 40-10, they won in '88 at Virginia Tech, 26-24. Sparky Wood's first year, it was a 17-17 tie. And then in '90, the Gamecocks won at Blacksburg after trailing 14-0, storming back. Mike Dingle, 3 touchdowns. Eddie Miller, a huge game through the air, and Robert Brooks. Gamecocks winning 35-24 in that one. And then the final game at Williams-Brice Stadium in 1991, the Gamecocks won 28-21. Gamecocks are 8-point favorites. Let's remember now, South Carolina is the number 13 ranked team in the country. They're coming off a 9-win season. Virginia Tech is unranked, and South Carolina is going to have the best 2 players on the field virtually the whole game, except when Dylan Stewart is getting a blow with Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart. The special teams, though, Virginia Tech returns their kickoff guy and their field goal kicker, who's a native of South Carolina, who kicked a 56-yard field goal in a bowl game. Very experienced. And quite frankly, I'm still wondering why South Carolina didn't tamper with him and buy him and bring him home for his final season. Maybe he just likes to hunt and fish up there in Blacksburg and Roanoke, and keeps playing that John Denver song, Country Roads. I don't know. To me, that's the only area where I would say Virginia Tech has the advantage over South Carolina, simply because it's just an unknown. We don't know how Mason Love is going to kick for the first time or punt in an NFL stadium, or Max Kelly if he's kicking off, or if he's kicking field goals, because we really don't know. How are you handicapping the field goal kicker and the kickoff guy 4 days away from this game on Sunday afternoon at Mercedes-Benz Stadium?
Yeah, I'm interested to hear, Shane Beamer kind of starts to name a few starters there from a special team standpoint. I think you have to imagine that as game, they're kind of pretty locked in on who those guys are going to be at holder, long snapper, kick returner, all that. I think from South Carolina's perspective is now it's just going out there and seeing if they can do it in a game, because you can do it in practice when only pretty much the team is watching. You do it in these, they can create these suspenseful, intense environments in practice, but it's different when again the lights are on in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and when you have to go out there and do it. So I think it's just now seeing those guys go out there and kick a 45-yard field goal, or if Mason Love's the punter, watching Mason Love go and pin Virginia Tech inside the 20 on a punt. I think now Virginia Tech kind of has that experience with Love. He's a guy that he's already done it. So I think that's something that you can't check for Virginia Tech, just an experience part. And who knows? Maybe you go out there and you see South Carolina and Mason Love or Max Kelly, whoever it is. You go out there and knock down all their field goals, and that'd be huge for South Carolina just from a confidence factor. And could be 1-2 where maybe for South Carolina you hope you can get maybe a short field goal early on for Mason Love. Obviously, you want to get into the end zone, but if you don't have a field goal, get a short field goal for whoever the kicker is going to be. Let it go through the uprights, and maybe it's almost like a basketball player where they watch the ball go through the hoop one time, then their confidence soars, and it's kind of rolling from there. So I think it's kind of one of those where just hoping their confidence is high, building up their confidence, and watch them go out there and do it on Sunday.
John Love, 5'11", 180, redshirt junior from Spartanburg, kicking for the Hokies, and he's a good one. So back to the defensive line. Obviously, there's been a rash of injuries at edge. We talked about that. Jalen Brown, I was so fired up. I think everybody was fired up when that guy transferred from Missouri to South Carolina. He got injured in the spring. He's out. Then George Wilson transferred in the summer. He was having a great fall camp. Now he's out for the year. I don't really think Kobe Saki-Pra was going to be a factor because he came in late as a true freshman. But, you still got guys. You got Dylan Stewart, Desmond Umeozulu, like I said, Brian Thomas Jr., JT Gear, Damon Clowney, may be a guy that is a depth piece at this point. Then you got the Ant-Man, a guy I think we're both high on, Anthony Addison, who just – I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Cliff Matthews, but he sounds exactly like the same type of player as Cliff Matthews. He's all about ball, and he plays like his hair's on fire every single rep.
Yeah, I think just from an injury standpoint, the South has been pretty good overall. It's just that edge spot they've had a few go down, and I was interested to see George Wilson play this year because I think he could have given some stuff on third down, maybe a pass rush and third down specialist. But I think you heard some really good things about Anthony Addison in spring, and I think he kind of built on that. And I think anything they can get from him is going to be a huge plus. And now I think it just becomes imperative that those guys that are at the top of the depth chart stay healthy. Dylan Stewart and those guys like. And I think now you just want to see a guy like Desmond Umeozulu take that next step. It's year 3, and I think he's from a physical standpoint, I think he's ready now to going out there and doing it. And then you obviously got Damon Clowney in there, so I think they have the depth in there is still good. I think they're still okay. And now it just really becomes imperative that those guys stay healthy, just because of the losses with Jalen Brown and George Wilson.
All right, so how critical is it for Nick Sharp and Brandon Cisse? How much can they help with their knowledge, maybe not schematically, but of the personnel of Virginia Tech, having come from Wake Forest and NC State respectively, and one having played offense and one having played defense against the Hokies?
Yeah, I think Cisse could maybe give them a little bit just from a Kyron Jones standpoint. I'm sure he's really familiar with him. But just with the turnover on both sides of the ball that Virginia Tech's had, and then the new coordinators, I wonder, I think it's just a whole lot different. But I do think Cisse could probably give a little bit of scouting tips maybe on Kyron Jones, because I'm sure he's faced him and seen a lot of them during his time at NC State.
All right, so it should be a good one. Gamecocks are 8-point favorites. George Rogers, number 38. I saw him run for the Heisman. In my opinion, he's still the greatest player to ever put on a Carolina uniform. He's a Duluth, Georgia native. South Carolina playing in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. He's the honorary captain for this game. You got Bob Wachusen on the call, along with my man from ESPN. Good Lord.
Lewis Riddick.
Yeah, whatever you said.
Lewis Riddick.
Lewis Riddick. I like him a lot. He's a really sharp guy. Chris Budden on the sideline. Sunday afternoon, it'll be the only game in that time slot. The Gamecocks are an 8-point favorite. Hokies, it's going to look like a Halloween matchup. They're wearing white helmets, orange jerseys, orange breeches. Gamecocks back in black with last year's big game black home uniforms. The all black against Texas A&M and Missouri. Really sharp now with the bigger block C and the bigger logo. And I tell you what, Lenore Sellers look awfully good in whatever uniform he puts on. And Gamecocks are an 8-point favorite. Alex, how are you feeling about this game? If you had to make a pick, I know you guys are making them later. I just feel like you can never really count on turnovers, but, just like that Oklahoma game, it was over in 5.5 minutes. I've never seen anything like that. I think the big key in this one is because there's so much unknown about Virginia is I think South Carolina may start a little bit slow, particularly on defense. But turnovers and third down, I think, will be in kicking game critical in that first half. But Clayton White really makes great halftime adjustments. I think Carolina will pull away in the second half. Do you have a different thought process than that?
No, I feel pretty much similar to that. I think, some of my keys to the game for South Carolina are, I think you kind of have to weather the storm early. It's going to be a first game. You have to imagine it's going to be some first game, nervousness and things like that. Just kind of weather the storm early. You just imagine Virginia Tech's going to throw a lot at you. Adjust to what they're doing. I think obviously stop the run and run the ball. I think that's a key every game for South Carolina. But to be able to do that, it's going to open up a lot for you offensively. And defensively, you can make Virginia Tech one-dimensional. I think probably a one-score game at halftime. The South Carolina kind of slowly pulls away there and gets into a two-score game at least at the end of the game.
I had a lot of people last night on the Garnet Black Town Hall picking like 31-17. That sounds pretty good to me. I'd prefer it to be like 49-17. Probably breathe a little bit easier. All right, so there's some very intriguing games, Alex, and so I just want to ask you about 5 games on Friday night. Georgia Tech is at Colorado. I'm picking the humble Bumbles. I'm picking Georgia Tech to go on the road and take down Colorado. What do you think about that game?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be probably a touchdown game or so if Georgia Tech wins. Like, I really like Brent Key. I think he's going to do a pretty good job there at Georgia Tech. And Colorado just left so much from that team last year. And were they able to replace all that? We'll see. But I think Georgia Tech goes up there and comes back to Atlanta with a win.
I mean, toughness matters in football. Colorado not known for toughness. Brent Key, he brings his lunch pail, okay, every day. It's like he's chopping wood like they used to do at Rutgers, or row the boat like my guy PJ Fleck, just blue collar. And Haynes King is back, and I think that's going to be huge for Georgia Tech. Saturday, the marquee game, the one guy that won't be inside Ohio State Stadium is Dave Portnoy, the founder of Barstool Sports. He got banned. Now they're spinning it, saying, well, he's not on the big desk panel that goes inside the stadium. That's why he's not going to be in there. Ohio State said he ain't coming in, period. He can't even buy a ticket and get in our stadium. But it's number 1 Texas against number 2 Ohio State. Arch madness. I just don't know if I'm buying it. I'm taking the Buckeyes at home. What do you say about that one?
Yeah, I think all eyes are going to be on Arch Manning in this game. And I'm going back and forth on it because I think Texas has a really good roster overall. But I think being that it's in Columbus at the Horseshoe, I'm going Ohio State.
And Ohio State's going to have the best 2 players on the field.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Smith and the safety that transferred from Alabama. I mean, that dude's a freak. All right, so that night, it's the battle for the real Death Valley at Frank Howard Memorial Stadium in Clemson, where Dabo will rub the rock and run down the hill first, because it's all about Dabo and that weird cultish culture they got. LSU has not won a season opener since 2019. Garrett Nussmeier, how healthy is he? Clemson's about a 4-point favorite in this one. Are we going to see angry Brian Kelly banging the podium again after this game? What say you?
I think so. LSU struggled in first games these past 3 years, and I just, I think Clemson, I think it's going to end up being close, but I think Clemson ends up winning by a touchdown at the end.
So I think it's going to boil down to me, the key matchup. LSU, they lost 4 starters off their offensive line. Clemson probably has 2 first-rounders in Parker and the big
Woods.
guy from Alabama, Peter Woods, that was like a 5-star, and some people thought the best player in the country coming out. I know, they probably had to take up a big offering at Jeff Davis's church to get that dude away from Alabama, but they're there. Garrett Nussmeier, I think, is the better quarterback. I think Clemson and LSU very similar at wide receiver, studs. I think LSU probably a little bit better at running back. LSU's spent a lot on defense. They have a great defensive coordinator, Blake Baker, coming over from Missouri. I think the whole key to this game is LSU's ability to stay in 3rd and short and 3rd and medium, so they're just not pinning back their ears and coming after Garrett Nussmeier. He's got to stay upright. If he does, I think LSU can win this game. If not, Clemson. So then you got the Gamecocks and Hokies on Sunday. Then Sunday night, Chris Lee and I will be going back to the Atlanta airport to catch our 11 p.m. flights back home. We're flying in and flying out the same day. By the way, have you ever been to a game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium?
I've not. This will be my first time.
Me too. I can't wait. No guarantee I'll ever get to see another one. So at least for the Gamecocks. So I got to do it. I'm no spring chicken. I don't have 40 more years. But Sunday night, somewhere in that airport at a sports bar, we're going to be watching Catholics at Convicts. On my prize picks, as you came in the studio, I got Carson Beck throwing more than 1.5 touchdown passes. Notre Dame starting Lloyd Carr's grandson, his first, he's a freshman. It's going to be his first start. Miami, it looks like they will have a defense this year. It was optional last year. He brought in a high-priced coordinator. They spent a lot in the portal. Catholics versus Convicts. Lou Holtz ain't coaching anymore, bro. Who you got?
I think I'm going Miami by field goal. I'm interested to see Carr play. It's going to be early on in his career to get that start. It's going to be a big time, game just from a national perspective. I think Miami gets it done by field goal.
All right, then Monday night, it's the Jordan Belichick era opening up against the horned frogs from TCU. TCU at North Carolina. Are you buying the Belichick hype? I personally think Sonny Dykes is going to come in there and welcome Bill Belichick to college football. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't know what to think about North Carolina. They just have so many things going on. I think I'm going TCU. I think I'm going to have them winning by a touchdown in that one.
Doesn't North Carolina have like 70 new players?
Yeah.
80 new players on their roster? That's just untenable, I think. Hell, that's like Deion, his first year at Colorado, and we know how that started, like 3-9. So, of course, the Big 12 is better than the ACC. There's like 8 or 9 teams that could win the Big 12. There's nobody other than Clemson that's going to win the ACC. Well, Alex, I can't thank you enough, brother. Great stuff. As always, enjoyed chopping it up and finally getting to talk about games, because games are happening. Games, you had the Fumble Ogeddon Bowl last week, which was entertaining, and then Stanford and Hawaii went down to the wire. Hawaii kicks a field goal as time expires to win that one. Is pretty good. Old Danny Kicks, they started off slow and held on to win by a touchdown. It looks like it's going to be a lot of offense and not much defense at UNLV this year. But real games this week, and that includes the Gamecocks and Hokies in the Beamer Bowl. So, like you said, I'm probably setting the over-under at especially if South Carolina's winning, I think Frank Beamer may get more airtime than Shane Beamer on TV in that one. So, Alex, great stuff. Maybe I'll bump into you outside Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Or I'll wave and say, hey, if, we're close. I'll be the guy wearing Holderness and Bourne polo from my guy, BP Skinner, in section 133. So I'll wave. You can just wave at 133 and that'll be me.
I'll be on the lookout.
All right, brother. Be well, safe travels, and go Cox. Gamecocks, number 13. They win this one. Got to start fast. and I'm all about it. Look, this ain't Lenoris Sellers' first start, and it ain't going through preseason thinking, oh, we're just playing Old Dominion. I think the Gamecocks, the Hokies, have their full attention, and they're going to bring the pain. It's like Clubber Lang. What's your prediction for the fight? Pain. I think there's going to be plenty of pain inflicted on the Hokies by the Gamecocks. Alex, be well, and we'll catch up with you down the road.
Always fun having you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. All right, that will do it for me. Appreciate everybody watching. You can listen in podcast form on the Bleed Podcast Network, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, on the YouTube channel. Subscribe. That way you'll know exactly when I drop the show. You'll get an alert who the guests are going to be. And certainly we had a great show today with Hale McGranahan and Alex Jones from the Big Spur. So I'll be back tomorrow and Friday on Gamecock Pod Daily with my final picks and my projection on South Carolina's record for this season on Friday's show. Sunday morning, I'm getting up early, flying in to Hartsfield International Airport, meeting my guy, Chris Lee, and then we're getting on MARTA. I think you got to change one time and then walk one block to Mercedes-Benz Stadium after the game, do the same thing, and head back to the airport, grab some dinner, and get ready for a late night flight. Hopefully I'll get to see a bunch of you. Like I said, I'm in section 133. I'll be wearing that BP Skinner Holderness and Bourne white script Carolina polo. So look for me. My bald head will be shining, and I'll be pulling hard for the Gamecocks. Hopefully I'll see a bunch of you. I'll always enjoy that, running into folks. Go Gamecocks. We'll be back same bat time, same bat channel next week. Until then, Keith Allsep, as you see, already transitioning over to the swoosh. I'm out of here.